The title of my presentation, Open Data and Fair Principles. I would put that in the framework of health-related data and illustrate it with my experience at the BFH Institute for Medical Informatics. So this is the agenda for today, and let's start with some definition. So my colleague Kerstin, who just spoke, gave us in her book this definition of open data. It's publicly available data that can be universally and readily accessed, used, redistributed free of charge. I'll let you read the rest, so there shouldn't be any license or restriction to it. And in Switzerland, what's the status? There is an organization for the promotion of open data called opendata.ch, but I must say it's mainly active in e-government data, like weather forecast and other data produced by governmental agency. The second institution, very important, we just heard before Sven, the SNF requires that research data should be freely accessible to everyone. But if you read the first paragraph, the whole paragraph, you read, provided there are no legal, ethical, copyright or other issues. But health data, it's all about legal, ethical and copyright and other issues. So how can you deal with open data and health data? Well, I'll hope in 20 minutes you will have the answer. Well, open data, it's also something that is more and more discussed. And if will take an example just from yesterday, while I was building this presentation, there was the announcement, the Federal Office of Topography, Swiss Topo, is releasing all its data free of charge. And when I think in the consultancy company that I worked for, that Kerstin mentioned, I did a report in 2003 to go in that direction and built a geodata portal. So 18 years ago, we started the discussion and now it's open source. So it can be slow. And again, this is for eGov data. So this is not yet health data. Well, fair. What are the fair principles? I will mention those very briefly here and give you the reference to more detailed information, but I will illustrate that later on in two examples of project I will comment. So fair principles, data should be findable. So you can search a database. That means that data has metadata describing what it is all about. Is it about diagnostic, symptoms, medication? Data should be accessible. That means according to authentication, identification of the research person looking for data. And the data should be protected depending if it's anonymized, pseudonymized, or personal data. Data should be interoperable. That means semantic interoperability, where the coding of the data is such that anybody can reuse it. For example, ICD-10 for diagnosis, or the FHIR semantic for symptoms data as observation, where you can refer to coding in SNOMED City, for example. And reusable, that means that the data gathered through a study should be published in some repository with the metadata of who is the owner, what are the conditions to access the data, and in that way you reach a real reuse. So this is the link, and you'll be able to receive a copy of this presentation where you have the more detailed description of those four principles. I put that here, maybe we can come back during the workshop in one of those. Well, data. Talking about health, what are the determinants of our health? We know it's about 1/4 about the treatment. So our health doesn't depend only on hospital and physician, but we also know it's about 1/4 of our genome, so what we inherited from our parents, the environment and lifestyle, mainly what we eat, how we move, and how we behave. And where do those data comes from? Well, from biobanks, from genome data, from hospital electronic health record, in Switzerland in the future electronic patient record, EPD. Non-personal data, I mentioned earlier Swiss Topo, but Meteo Schweiz is also a source of information. I'll give an example later. And lifestyle, mainly with the sensors, so wearables, or entering the data through mobile application. And three of those ellipses are about personal data: genome, treatment, and our lifestyle. And one category is non-personal data, like exposition to pesticide or to pollen or air quality problems. Well, is personal data equal personal data? I come back to something that Sven already told us about. It's not exactly the case, because there are personal data like my name, my surname, that identifies me. There might be some other information like my address, but in the law, there are sensitive personal data, which is, and it was also mentioned by Sven, medication, but also income, religion, DNA. And the Federal Act about data protection specify that additionally, for those sensitive personal data, there must be an expressly and consent that has to be given expressly in the case of processing sensitive personal data or profiles as mentioned. So now we face two dimensions for research. We want to maximize the usage of data or secondary usage if it's data that has been gathered routinely by the hospital. But we want to maximize, or we have to maximize, the protection of the personal data. And those are two dimensions that seems to fight against each other. But if you want to have large cohort of patients participating to studies, especially longitudinal studies, then you have to address those two conditions. And now I'm bringing a new concept here, which is the My Data, which is an international not-for-profit association, which was originally founded in Finland. So the logo has the color of my T-shirt, because this T-shirt is a collectible. You can see it was the logo from the first Congress in 2016, where I was in Helsinki for that, to present what we did at the BFH at that time. And the purpose of My Data with the Y is mentioned here: empowering individual by improving their right to self-determination regarding their personal data. And My Data has also a declaration, which I put as a symmetry to FAIR principle. FAIR is to reuse the data as much as possible. And the My Data declaration goes in principle to patient empowerment and citizen empowerment by having a user-centric control of personal data. Remember, almost the last slide of Sven was, in the future, who will be owning the data? Well, I will show you that we have an answer how it is possible today, according to those principles: human-centered control of personal data. Individual as the point of integration. If you want to do a longitudinal study and cross data, like we have a project in partnership with the ETH and the University Hospital of Zurich, where we integrate MRI from exams for patients suffering of multiple sclerosis, but those patients do also cognitive tests and motoric tests at home with mobile application. And we also aggregate with the medical reports. And we use the individual as the person that aggregates its data so that it is linked, and then give the consent that this data de-identified can be reused. If you first de-identify the MRI, the reports, and the test of the patient, then you are not able to cross and link those data for multidimensional studies. Individual empowerment is also one of those principles. You have the source of that declaration if you want to look at it more in details later on. Portability and access and reuse is also one of the principles. Transparency, as also mentioned by Sven, not only telling what's the data plan is, but all information about the project, why we collect that data, who's going to use it for what purpose. And interoperability, so that the data gathered is reusable by the person itself or other actors. So the law in Switzerland, I can go very fast because it has been presented before. There is the Federal Act on Data Protection, the Federal Act on Research involving human being, which is in work. Here I've put the official English translation of the status January 2020. There is a new version 2021, but not published in English yet. So now I come to our experience for solving the challenges. And at the BFH, we work in partnership with a cooperative called Me Data. So notice it's with an I, not an Y, which is the slogan, with my data, I can contribute to research that improve our health. So you have data sources, and Me Data act as a secure safe where each individual manage himself, his data, which is encrypted, and each of the users can decide to what research project they can participate. When we went with that concept to the federal officer for data protection, he asked us who is owning the data. And we said, well, it's certainly not Me Data, it's the individuals. And he was trying to see, but who's the organization owning the data? Because he's supposed to audit the owner of the data according to the actual law. And we said, well, the data is owned by about 20,000 participants that each of them owns his data library. So using the actual law, he would have to audit 20,000 Swiss citizens to audit our concept. So the law needs some adaptation according to the possibility of cloud computers and cryptographic. Each piece of data is encrypted with a key that is different for each patient. So the data security goes well beyond secure computer center or login. It goes up to encryption of each data pieces. So Me Data is not only a platform, as you see on the right-hand side in this light blue with the open API and access management. It's also a governance body with is autonomous. I'm part of the board of this organization, but we have a general assembly that elect the board. We have an independent council of data ethics and governance rules where I will give you the links. So what can be done with Me Data? Well, account holders, as we define them, can use a portal to enter data. They can import data from their Fitbit or Strava account, or they can enter data through mobile application. I'll give you an example. And they can give consent to share the personal data with their personal health professional for advice, for second opinion, for coaching, or they can, in a different pattern, consent to share the data in a pseudonymized or anonymized way, either for a closed study for one team of a university hospital or the University of Bern or Reset, or consent to give their data anonymized for open data. So we have a framework which allows us to have all those different patterns and it's only a configuration. So with a few clicks, we can set up that configuration with the different setting and with the same data being reused, personal, anonymized, pseudonymized, or even pushed open data. And that means a framework of policies on the mobile application or the source of data with term of use, app description, eventually medical device regulation. We haven't gone into that red domain so far. The platform itself has general terms of condition, privacy policies, and we manage explicit informed consent and granular consent management to each piece of data, so it's dynamic consent and not general consent. You will receive that presentation and have an example of documents for each of those terms. I took here the example of the Corona Science project that I will now present in the last 5 minutes I have. So maybe a few words on our first large data project, 10,000 participants. We developed with a young designer a pretty cool slide user interface where you slide and glide to define the strengths of your allergy, pollen allergy symptoms. And we are aggregating on the platform open data or almost open data because we needed to sign a contract. So it's not open data yet, but will become soon. With the pollen prevision, we integrated measures with the laser technology that we have on the roof of the BFH. We entered patient-reported outcome and the medication of patient. And that, if you remember the ecosystem I showed before, for that project, we were able to recruit people that agree to open a personal account, agree the option to agree to have medical report exported for the healthcare provider. We are working at the moment on this extension, agree to have their data anonymized and exported for the research team at USZ, and also to have a second export of the data to build up the real-time allergy symptoms card in Switzerland, built up by the community of the users. For that project, we didn't go all the way to open data. The lessons learned, 80% of the people that downloaded the app agreed to open an account, give access for USZ for sharing the data, accepted the condition of using the mobile application, and to share data with the AliScience community, which is a very high acceptance rates for 4 steps with and without any counseling, also, only online. And we were able to register 5,000 participants within a week. And more interesting for you, if you're, I guess you're doing research, that's your reason for being with us this afternoon. The whole project, from the study design, financing, specification, implementation, test, security audit, translation, communication concept, within 4 months. We did the whole work within 4 months. We thought we broke a record there, but wait for the second project. And here, I stole this slide from an hour ago from Sven with the right reference. So he told us this is what you have to do. Location of storage, access management, internal standard, prospective studies, front end, back end. And we did that just by configuring the metadata and the data management framework we have at BFH. So this is for us something we do within 1 or 2 days. Well, when Corona hit us a year ago, we thought, well, can we use that technology to gather data in open data? We wanted to participate to the effort of the scientific community to have data gathered from the Swiss population. So again, we developed a mobile application, and then we said we go all the way. We show transparently to the population, do you want to participate? If yes, we will anonymize your data, but it will go directly in open data. And we were curious if we will be questioned, if there will be controversy on the social network. And the lessons learned within the first week, 10,000 participants. So people trust transparency and framework. And again, they don't trust old professor with white hair or without any hair, but they trust a framework and transparency. And we were the first app online on Apple Store and Google Store in Switzerland, mid-April 2020. Another lessons learned is that we have this open data set, but we don't know where to publish it because there is no well-known open data platform for health data in Switzerland. So even though SNF is asking for that, if we say, okay, we have it, now where can we push it? There is no answer. And again, is it complicated to do it? Yes, it's very complicated, but can you do it quickly? Yes, if you have the framework. And we did that project in 25 days. And when I say 3.5 weeks, it's 25 days straight on, no weekend, 16 hours work a day with a core team of 5 people that worked on adrenaline pure from mid-March to mid-April to fight the pandemic. So to do that, you can do, if you have a framework, if you have templates for documentation, if you have a platform, if you have a mobile app framework, and coolest team, I must say, and also access to external expertise. We had a bunch of people that helped us to do that. And here I'm coming to the end. I have as a reserve some technology for the techies among you that we can come back if you'd like. But now I will conclude in the time we agreed upon on 20 minutes and give back the word to Kerstin for the moderation of the workshop. And I look forward for a lot of exchanges with you in the next 20 minutes. Thank you.